What's good, guys? In this video, we're going to be comparing two very good no-code tools. Specifically, we're going to be comparing FlutterFlow versus Adalo. Now, more specifically, we are going to be comparing both of these tools in 6 categories. We're going to be talking about the UI, logic, backend, components, extensions and plugins, and last but not least, the community. Now, at the end of the video, I'm going to be giving you my personal opinion as to which one of these tools I prefer for my own work, which one of these tools is better for which purpose, and really which one of these tools is a tool that you should be focusing on, spending your time and energy in order to build the apps that you want. Now, before we get started, if you like no code, if you are interested in building software without writing a single line of code, maybe you're not technical, maybe you're not interested in learning programming, but you just want to build software, make sure you smash a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, definitely leave a comment below the video letting me know what you think about this tutorial, if you have any constructive criticism, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, or maybe you just want to say thanks. Having said that, let's begin. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the UI. So here I have FlutterFlow open. I have an app here. And here's I have an Adalo open. I also have an app that I created. So if we go back to FlutterFlow, okay, the first thing you guys got to understand is we have here pages and components. But what's nice about it is that we have here lots of different things that you can add. And here we have kind of a hierarchy, okay? Now, once you pick an element, you can essentially, you have a ton of things that you can do with that element. You have all the properties, you have the properties of the element, you also have the actions, you have the database, the kind of data it's showing, where it's hooked up to, whether it's a backend or something else. We also have animations as well. So there are kind of two things you need to be looking at: the way we're adding elements and the way we are modifying or deleting existing elements. Now, if we go into Adalo, we also have something very similar. So if you hit this plus button, you can add components or you can add screens. So for instance, a screen is like a page. A component is kind of what you see on this page. So if I zoom in a little bit, you can see that this specific page is made up of 2 components. So I can pick this component here and I say which data collection. I can say users. This is kind of the backend where it's getting the data from. Or maybe I can pick this one here and I can say, well, what kind of data is going to be displayed here? Is this going to be a static text or is it going to be magic text, meaning it's going to be getting from a database? We also have formatting and stuff like that. So it does fulfill kind of the basic 2 things, right? You can easily add screen and add a component. It's very similar, although I would say FlutterFlow is definitely more powerful. It gives you a lot more options. In terms of the UI, you have all these layout elements, you have all of these base elements. If we go back here, you don't really have layout elements, you don't really have that. You kind of have to decide how you want to do it, right? We have, list button, we have the basic elements, but you don't really have these crazy layout elements. You kind of have to align it on your own. So for instance, if you have this here, this would be a row in FlutterFlow. You would probably have a column and a row here. Whereas in this case, it's just an element, okay? So if I want to create another, if I want this to be a row, I just decrease the width, come back here and drag and drop another button here, okay? So that's kind of the way you do it. It's a little bit less robust, it's a little bit less developed, but still it's enough to kind of, quickly build out an app. So I would say FlutterFlow's UIs is a lot more sophisticated, a lot more complicated, whereas Adalo's is just simpler, but they both get the job done. The next thing I want to talk about is the logic. Now remember guys, logic is really what makes the app. Without logic, all you have is a web page. You don't really have an app, okay? And so if we go back to FlutterFlow and we want something to happen when we do something to an element, okay? So here we have an element. Let's say we click on this button. We have this button here and we click on it. We want something to happen. So in this case, all I need to do is go to this component, click on the second tab, and I have an action. So I can add an action and I have a lot of things that I can do. I can navigate to another page. I can navigate to an internal page, on an external page. I can do a backend query, right? So if I click on it, I can pull up some data from a database. I can do an API call. I can do a lot of interesting things. There's also UI interactions, and I can also create a custom action. So I can click here and I can define a custom actions. Okay, so I don't have a custom action here. So if I close this out, I don't have a custom action. So I can create a new custom action. And these are very, very powerful because they essentially allow you to do a lot of things. And this is available with all elements, really. So if I click on this image here, I can add, I can come in here, I can add an action, and I can pretty much do the same thing. And I can also open an action flow editor. And this allows me to create more complex actions. I can chain actions. So I can have one action, then I can come in here, I can add another action, etc., etc. I can kind of drag and drop these. I can rearrange them like this. Lots of interesting things I can do. Now, if we go to Adalo, Adalo is a lot simpler. It also gets the job done, but it's a lot simpler. So for instance, let's say we have this button. I can click on this button and I have this submit button. And this submit button has an action. So it has these two actions here, click actions, and I can also add another action. So let's say we want to add a new action. So let's say I have a button here. Let's say I add a button right here. I add a new button and I click and I pick it. I scroll down, it has no actions. I can say I want to add an action. I can have a link, which is essentially navigations. I can create something, meaning I can create something that's in our data scheme. So I have messages and users. Well, guess what? I can create a new message. I can create a new user. I can also update something. I can delete something. I have notifications and I have custom actions. Okay, so if I click on here, I have something called custom actions, and for that I need to upgrade my account. Okay, another thing that I can do is I can do a sharing kind of thing. I can change input, and I can do a user action, meaning something like a login, log out, sign up, or forgot password. Okay, so as you can see, Adalo is a lot simpler. It's a lot simpler. It doesn't have like, you know, kind of an action editor. It doesn't have a lot of these other things here. Like for instance, if I open this, it doesn't, you know, I cannot do like an Algolia search. I can do a custom action, which is similar to what you can do here, but I can't do authentication. I can't really do an API call. There's a lot of things that I can do, like all of these things, expand image, dark mode settings. So there's a lot more things that I can do with FlutterFlow. But having said that, what I really like about Adalo, so if I pick this, I can essentially manipulate the data in a very, very easy way. So, you know, I might have, you know, a collection of messages or a collection of users here in this specific app. And I can easily create a new message, create a new user. I can update an existing something. In this case, it's a logged in user. It has this CRUD, right? This CRUD, which is create, read, update, delete. Okay, I can do all that. So it's create, update, delete, and obviously reading, I can just display the text, and that's essentially reading it. So while it's a lot simpler, you can do a lot of great things here in Adalo as well. Don't get me wrong, but it's definitely a lot simpler, and you will definitely run into situations where there's certain things are either not possible to do or they're going to be more cumbersome to do. But for building simple apps, the logic, the way the logic works here is absolutely sufficient. The next thing I want to talk about is the backend, right? You need to store data somewhere, right? You're going to be building an app, and that app is going to be doing something with the data. It's going to be manipulating the data. Now, when it comes to FlutterFlow, the kind of data you have, well, first of all, you have Firebase, right? This is Google's own kind of database. It's a very, very simple NoSQL database, and this is great for pretty much any kind of project. It's very, very fast. It's scalable. And you have the Google's weight behind you because you can set it up on Google's end, and it makes things a lot easier. I've created lots and lots of tutorials where I talk about how to use it, and this is awesome whether you are building an initial prototype or building a production app, because it's very, very powerful. So we have Firebase. Another thing that we have is if you go here into settings, we also have Algolia. So if you come here into Algolia, we have something called an Algolia. So what is an Algolia? Algolia is a way to make your app searchable. It allows you to create essentially a search engine. So whether you want to build the next Google, or you're building an e-commerce store that requires search, or what, you know, any kind of situation where your app requires search and very, very fast search, Algolia is awesome for that because you can easily take your existing data, mainly your Firebase data, right? Your Firestore database data, and you can create an Algolia index on it. And that means your data is going to be very, very quickly searchable. You can also have access to recommendation technology. So it's going to make things awesome if you need any kind of search engine, search functionality or search engine functionality in your app. So it's very, very powerful. Another thing that you can do is you can also do API calls. Okay, so here we have an API configuration. I can add an API call and I have it here. So this is your typical API stuff. And so if you want to, connect to a third-party service and you need to actually, get data, you want to send data, you want to write data, you want to receive data, without storing the data locally, you can use APIs. Now, admittedly, this part here, you need to pay extra for. It's in another tier. Now, if we go into Adalo, you have several other options. And so if you go into the database tab here, you have your internal database. And this is really, really awesome because essentially when you have an ability to store data locally, internally in your app, you can hit the ground running a lot faster. It's a lot easier to build an app. It's a lot easier to prototype an app. It's just a lot easier to get going without dealing with, Google's Firebase or Algolia or any of these other things. It's just a lot easier. So that is definitely a plus for Adalo. And so here I have my users collection. I can just click on it and I can see all the users here. Or I have another collection here, messages. I can click on it and I can add a message. Or I can come here and I can import. I can import a CSV of existing messages. So this is a big, big benefit when it comes to building your app because I can easily, generate a bunch of data. I can export data from Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel. I can import a CSV. I can create this data manually. So this is a big, big plus for Adalo. Another thing that Adalo has is API functionality. And in order to use that, you can have your external collections. And for that, you need to upgrade. So you need to upgrade to another plan. And this is very, very similar with FlutterFlow. You also have APIs, but you also need to update to another plan. So in this case, it's a tie, right? They both have APIs, but you also need to be paying a little bit extra in order to use that. But if we are not talking about APIs, here you have kind of your internal database, which is great, which is awesome. Whereas FlutterFlow is more advanced because it gives you access to Google's Firebase. You also have Algolia. So it's a little bit more sophisticated. But still, without taking anything from Adalo, you have your internal database, which is more than enough to kind of go out and build your own app. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is components. Okay, so this is different than extensions, than other things. We are just talking about custom components that the platform gives you. So here in FlutterFlow, if I go in here, let's say I'm building stuff, right? I have this, I have a bunch of text, I can use text, columns, app bar, image. But what if I want something more sophisticated, something more complicated? Well, I can simply go in here. It has this template tab here. And I can drag and drop all of these kind of more complex components. So I have a paywall component. I can just drag it here. And I have this whole paywall component that I can customize to my liking. And I don't really need to build it from scratch. Now, that's kind of what I like about FlutterFlow, is we have lots and lots of components. So we have UI elements components. We have bottom sheets. We have headers. We have card views. We have content views, so many great things that you can just use right off the shelf without building it yourself. So maybe you are building some kind of like a booking site. Well, you have here a kind of a booking card, which you can customize to your liking. And really, like, I made tons of videos on FlutterFlow, and I talked about how this is a big benefit because in many cases, you can simply drag and drop these off-the-shelf components and go out and build your app without really coding a lot of these things yourself. So this is a big, big plus when we are talking about FlutterFlow. Now, when we go into Adalo, Adalo also has components. So here we have a marketplace. We can kind of explore it. And you have a lot of these different things that you can add. So, we have a map, we have a calendar, we have YouTube. You can play a YouTube video. We have a multi-select drop-down. So instead of a regular drop-down, we have a multi-select. We have a deck swiper, a chart kit. So there are also lots and lots of components, marking calendar, but some are going to be free. So these are free. It's still a good amount, right? So if you pick just free, you're still given a ton of components kind of to work with. But there are also lots of premium components, right? So there's a ton of other premium components. And you can also create your own components. So I can just click on here. We are going to be redirected to Adalo developer site where you can kind of create your own components. And it's the same thing when it comes to FlutterFlow, right? With FlutterFlow, all you have to do is go in here and you can create custom widgets. So we have this custom widgets area. I can just hit create and I can create a custom widget. I can just code a little bit. I can add a little bit of code. Very, very similar with Adalo. And Adalo, you also have to create a little bit of code and then you can create your own component, your own widget. So in this case, I would say that probably FlutterFlow has more off-the-shelf components. So if you go back here, we go to this template tab here, and there's a lot of components. I would say probably FlutterFlow has more off-the-shelf components, but not by a lot, right? Like Adalo still has a lot. So if we go in here and free, it's still a lot of components, but definitely FlutterFlow has more. But we also have premium. So if you want to pay a little bit more, you can have access to more components here as well. So I think the edge is going to go to FlutterFlow because it has more off-the-shelf components, but you do have an ability to create your own components, both in Adalo as well as in FlutterFlow. The next thing I want to talk about is extensibility and plugins. So this is different than just components that we just talked about. What I mean by extensibility in plugins is that in certain no-code apps, no-code tools, you can essentially build the logic. You can build a lot of these things yourself. So it's not just building components. You can also build the actual code. You can actually make the app behave in the exact ways you want it to behave. So what I mean by that is if you go here in FlutterFlow, so I go to this tab here, this custom functions tab. I have something called custom functions, okay? I can create custom functions. I also have custom actions, meaning that functions are kind of internal to the app. Actions is what the user sees. So in FlutterFlow, if you go back here and I pick an element and I have this actions here, right? I have my actions. So I have, I have navigate to, navigate back, I have wait, I have database and all that. But I can also create my own custom actions. I can redirect the user to Google. I can, get weather. I can do a lot of things. And just to give you an example, if you go to pub.dev, this is Flutter's and FlutterFlow's extension repository. This is the official package repository for Dart and Flutter apps. So your FlutterFlow app has access to this. And take a look at this repository. There's so many things that you can do. So for instance, let's say I want to build a URL redirector. I want to redirect them to a specific URL. I want to do some logic. I have here a story direct. I have here a redirect icon. I have so many other tools. And really, there's limitless amount of things that you can do. I can also build my own little plugin that will do any kind of logic that I want to happen. So meaning my own action. So if I go in here, it's going to be here. It's going to create some kind of a user experience. And maybe it's going to be a something having to do with a widget or some kind of a redirect. So this is awesome because you can essentially make your app any way that you want. Now, if you go into Adalo and you want to build something similar, you can select this button here. You can add an action and you also have a new custom action here. So you can create a new custom action. But the problem is you need to upgrade again. So whereas in FlutterFlow, it's part of kind of the free package, in Adalo, you need to upgrade. So they're kind of similar and you can do a lot of interesting things in both of these apps, except here you need to upgrade. Now, even though you have to upgrade here in order to kind of use it, I will say that the support in FlutterFlow is when it comes to kind of creating your custom stuff, expanding your app, plugins, extensions. I would say that when it comes to FlutterFlow, the community is a lot bigger. You have access to a lot more packages, a lot more things that you can do it. FlutterFlow is great if you really want to customize your app. In my view, it's a lot more powerful than Adalo when it comes to like customizing your app, whether creating your custom component, custom action, or stuff like that. So I would give this an edge to FlutterFlow. Now, last but not least, I want to talk about community, because community is very, very important. So FlutterFlow was launched in 2021, so in May of 2021, whereas Adalo was launched in November of 2019. So Adalo essentially has an almost 2-year head start on FlutterFlow. So it's been around for a little bit less than 2 years. And so as a result, more people know about Adalo, more people know about Adalo than kind of people that know about FlutterFlow. And Adalo has also very vibrant forums. You can simply go to forum.adalo.com and you can ask your questions here. So as you can see, a lot of these threads, they are very, very active. You have 2 minutes ago, 4 minutes ago, 27 minutes, an hour ago, 3 hours ago. 5 hours ago. On the other hand, FlutterFlow also has a very, very vibrant community. You can simply head to community.flutterflow.io and you can see lots of different threads on all kinds of different topics. Now, even though FlutterFlow is relatively newer than Adalo, it has been around for less time than Adalo. In my view, there's a lot of interest in FlutterFlow right now. And so I would not say that FlutterFlow has a smaller community than Adalo simply because it hasn't been around as long. I have noticed there's a lot of interest in FlutterFlow right now, kind of what I've been seeing on the internet, the people I've been talking with. So I would definitely not give this edge to Adalo. But it's important to know that both of these tools have very, very vibrant communities around them. All right, so now that we talked about the pros and cons and different categories, more specific things, the things that you can do, the things that you can't, let me give you my personal opinion as someone who has built lots of apps in each of these tools. In my opinion, Adalo is great if you need something quick, if you want to whip up a quick mobile app prototype, if you want to see how an app may behave, if you want to see if the app might be successful, you want to whip up an app, you want to give it out to like a testing group, you want them to play around with them, you want them to kind of see. And also, it's not a bad choice if you are building a simple mobile app. So nothing too complex, nothing too crazy, something very, very simple, something that's essentially going to be pulling data, showing data, allowing the user to update, delete, create new data, stuff like that. Adalo is perfect for that. On the other hand, if you are looking for a much more sophisticated tool, you are looking to build a very sophisticated app, you're looking to build a feature-packed app, you're looking to build an app that's going to be doing a lot of things, an app that's going to be creating a lot of value for the user, you're looking for a more powerful tool, then that tool is FlutterFlow. Whereas Adalo is a great tool to whip up a prototype very, very quickly. It's a great tool to kind of get the job done in those initial stages, to kind of just see if something is going to work or not. In my personal opinion, FlutterFlow is a lot more powerful. It has a lot more features. It allows you to build something a lot more sophisticated, a lot more complicated. And also, if you are really looking to understand how software engineering works, how to really design a great app, you can start with Adalo, but later on it would be a great idea to kind of graduate to FlutterFlow, because FlutterFlow exposes you to a lot of these concepts that are going to be helpful when you're going to be developing apps using these no-code tools. Adalo is just too simple when it comes to exposing you to a lot of these important concepts, whereas FlutterFlow does that amazingly. And so that is my view and my opinion when it comes to which tool you should be using for which situation. I really hope you found that helpful. And that is all that I wanted to talk about in today's video. I really hope you've gotten value. If you did, definitely smash the like button, subscribe to the channel so you do not miss any future videos, and leave a comment below this video letting me know what you think about everything that we talked about so far, if you have any questions or concerns, or if you just want to say thanks. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll talk to you in a future video.